we can buy any house from any seller. And these are the key methods that we use to build a profitable real estate business. And it covers quite a few different dimensions. Sometimes we will just go out and get a contract with some kind of terms, some kind of price, and we will sell that contract. We never actually take title to the house. This is known as wholesaling. We are simply getting a contract and then selling that papers. Then there are deals that have quite a lot of profit when we improve the value of the property through some kind of a renovation. Fixer-uppers. This is called retailing a house. Sometimes we will do that. But folks, both of these first two that I list here really involve houses that, generally speaking, are in a state of disrepair. Well, what if you could make even more money and not have to deal with houses that are in a state of disrepair, not have to add value to the house, and just leverage your skills, leverage your brain instead of your brawn, your financial brawn and your physical brawn, to get rehab properties and fix them up? What if you could just go to sellers who don't have a lot of equity in their house and then take over their payments? Now you own the house, they still have the debt in their name, but we're paying it for them because they don't want to anymore or can't. That's one of my favorite strategies. A lot of people call that taking over properties sub to or subject to. There's differences between the way I instruct us to consummate those deals than what others do, which I think are important differences that come from a lot of experience versus some of the youngsters who are out there who maybe have done it a couple times in a bull market and they think that a bull market is a sign for brains. Well, things go awry and they didn't put the right paperwork in place or the right structures in place. We'll see where they land. Another thing that we do is where a seller will have a lot of equity and there's no way they're just going to let us take over the underlying loan or let us just, if there's no loan on it and it's just free and clear, we might be able to give them a much higher price, which is what they want. That's not dialed back by realtor fees and inspection concession, closing costs and things of that nature. They want to get all the money that the house has earned, but they have to be a little bit patient in getting it. So they will effectively loan us the money, not like handing over the money, but they hand over the house in exchange for us being willing to make payments to them on that price, on that loan. So let's say it's a $400,000 house. The seller doesn't loan us the $400,000 to buy their house, because they would be the ones getting the $400,000. Normally, you'd go to a bank, get the $400,000, give it to the seller, right? In this case, the seller is saying, okay, I'll take my $400,000 in monthly payments the same way you would pay a bank, you pay me. And we'll structure monthly payment terms, possibly an interest rate on it, a length of time for when it has to be paid off in full, and an amount, maybe even a down payment on it. This is called owner financing, seller financing, where the seller, instead of a bank or a private lender or some other lender other than the seller, where the seller is actually transferring the property to you in exchange for payments. Okay, that's owner-seller financing. Now, note that I said transferring the property to you. Well, that seller is owed $400,000 on the example I just gave. What if the seller's like, yeah, I'm good with getting monthly payments and I like the price of $400,000 because if I used a realtor after costs and fees and expenses, I might be looking at $370,000. That's $30,000. That pays for a year or two of my kids' college education, depending on where they're going. But I don't want to just give that to some realtor. So I like the idea of getting the $400,000, but man, I just cannot live with the idea of giving up the deed on this thing, having my name come off the property until I'm paid in full. Totally reasonable, right? And if we can't get them over that, and there are ways to get them over that, but if we can't, we'll simply say, cool, man, we'll just lease the property from you. We'll rent it from you. But you have to give us an option to buy the property during the term of our lease. That way, you're holding on to title to the deed, to the property, until I actually give you all the money that you have coming. And then once I do that, then you'll transfer the deed. That way you can still get all the money you have coming. You'll take it in monthly payments, but you still own the property. So if somehow I go afoul, you still own the property. So we can use a lease with a purchase option. Now, what if the seller's like, no, man, I don't like that. I bought this property. It's at Miami Beach. I love this property. I'm going to retire in this property. I don't really want to sell it. I was just looking to do a straight up rental on it until I get to my golden years, till I get to my retirement. Well, what if they will rent it to you at a rate where we can use what's called an arbitrage strategy, which allows us to simply sublet the house for more than what our rental payment is with the seller. For example, maybe we get them to allow us to use it as an Airbnb. But if we can rent on a yearly basis at a pretty low rental rate, but then relet or sublet the property on a short-term basis or even on a long-term basis to someone who's willing to pay more, we can make a spread between what our tenant is giving us and what we are giving our landlord, so to speak. That's rental arbitrage. That's an opportunity. Now, what about where you talk about all these various options with a seller, and the seller is like not really feeling any of this to a great enough degree to get us excited, to get us interested. They want too much money down. They're willing to own or finance it, but they want too much money down. They're willing to let us take over payments, but they want some kind of, lump sum so they can go do something with it. But it's more than what we want to pay. They are willing to give us a discounted price. It's got to be all cash, but it's not quite low enough. They are willing to give us monthly payment terms, but they want to be paid in just a couple of years. They want too high of a monthly payment relative to what the market could withstand. They want too high of a price relative to the way it would appraise. All of those scenarios are possible. So in those scenarios, we have a flexible seller who just wants a little bit more than we're willing to pay, but we have the skills to go out to the market and see what the market will really bring, and we can let the market speak. So what we do is we gain an agreement with the seller for what they're willing to do, but we give ourselves a longer time to close with them, 90 days, so we can go out and test the market, see what the market will bring for our buyer. If we beat the terms that we have with the seller, we'll go ahead and simultaneously close, funding our purchase from the seller out of our buyer's proceeds. If we don't, we have great feedback that we can give the seller on how the market is responding to what they want for their house, and we can either renegotiate the deal based on having a buyer in hand. A bird in the hand beats two in the bush often, and we can then close. Or it didn't work and the seller can do what they want at that point. Or we can convert it to this last option, which is, look, you just want too much for what the market will withstand. Let's go ahead and put it on the multiple listing service and go get that owner-occupant, bank-qualified, retail price-paying buyer that you're really looking for. All of those buyers are represented by realtors. Therefore, there's going to be a commission involved at some level. And if you're going to pay a commission, you might as well pay it to who's representing you. And then we have a whole script that we use to pick up listings when we can't buy the property ourselves. Folks, this is our strategy. Now, let's get into some of it. Knowing how to conduct each of those different deal types feeds right into what I said at the beginning of this presentation, so to speak, which is that it allows you to be consultative with the seller. There's no way the seller is going to sell that house in any other way than one of the things I mentioned on here, with this bottom one down here, having to sell it through a realtor, because most people just want to get all their cash and get out of it. Most people want a bank qualified owner-occupant, retail price paying cash buyer. The cash comes from a bank because they go get a bank loan, but all of those people are usually represented by realtors. So most deals are going to fall into this category here. I would submit to you that close to 100% of all deals fall across this entire spectrum. You can service every single one of these categories with this strategy. That's why we call it any house, any seller. Now, when you know that in your heart of hearts, from the top of your head to the bottoms of your toes, that's what allows you to be consultative with these sellers and improve your closing ratio and improve your profits massively, because so many of these deals are going to fall into that category. How do we do it? We have to get the seller's defenses down from the beginning, which means not jamming things down their throat, but asking the right questions, learning what they will do and learning what they won't do, and plugging that seller into the right outlet if you figure each of these as an outlet. Your deal flow is going to be directly related to how your character comes across, which I don't really teach in here. I think all of you have that naturally, just to be yourself, be genuine, be authentic. But your deal flow is going to be directly proportional to how you pick up this expertise that we're talking about here and apply it in your own unique way based on your own unique personality and based on your own integrity that comes across to these sellers. People want to work with people who have character. And the best way to demonstrate that is not to make statements to people, not to make assertions to people, but to ask them questions with a mindset of truly helping the seller accomplish what it is they want to accomplish, which is going to be one of these things, even if it's this last one. Okay? So let's just start with the deal structure that I frankly like the least, but it's totally fine if you want to do it. The reason I like it the least is because you give up so much and you just don't have to. But there is money to be made here, and sometimes it makes sense to deploy this strategy, which is a strategy of assigning the paperwork that you've created, the binding legal contract that you have with your seller, that the seller has to comply with, selling that to somebody who's actually going to perform on that contract. That's known as wholesaling. So we go and get a contract to buy a house, and then we simply sell that contract for profit. We never have to close on the house. Once you have a contract, folks, you actually have an asset. Did you know that? Well, you're going to have a contract to buy a property that some fixer-upper guy might like. Okay, so you go and get the contract and you sell that. It doesn't have to be a fixer-upper. You can assign terms deals too, but I ask why? Why would you do that? You might as well keep it yourself. Most of the time, the assignments, because why would you assign a terms deal where it doesn't even require any of your own money? You'd be better off staying in the middle like I was just describing. But most of the time the reason people assign is because it does require cash within a certain amount of time and you're having trouble getting a private lender, or you don't know private lenders, you don't have the ability to come in and close and rehab it yourself, so you just sell it to somebody who does and walk away with the difference and go do it again. Okay, so these deals are usually sold to a retailing investor, somebody who's going to fix it up and sell it retail, meaning, put it on the MLS and sell it to someone who's going to own or occupy the property. But like I said, folks, you can assign other deal types. Again, I'm going to convince you to not do that, I think, but you can go get properties sub to or with owner financing and just sell those deals. You can easily do that because there's people paying way, way too much for deals that are taken over sub to, and I'm going to discourage you from being one of those people because those people run a very big risk of getting burnt big time, which is a subject for another conversation. But yes, we can sell terms contracts as well. Also, you might not have to assign a contract. You could actually go get the buyer and simultaneously close your purchase from your seller with the proceeds, with the money from your buyer, and walk away with the difference. In other words, you have a contract to buy something for $100,000 and you have a buyer who's willing to pay $120,000. That buyer brings the $120,000 to escrow to close. The closing agent goes and purchases the property on your behalf for $100,000, transfers it to the person who put the $120,000 in, and you walk away with $20,000. This is all done simultaneously. This is known as a simultaneous closing. The thing of that is that there are lots of laws evolving regarding that kind of a practice and the practice of assigning contracts and wholesaling and how you market those.